you seen Star Wars?
It's hard to think that 5 years ago, a new era of Star Wars started. After Disney bought Lucasfilm in 2012, they announced a new trilogy would start with Episode 7 in 2015. And 5 years ago today is when the world returned to the galaxy far, far away after being away for almost 10 years. And looking back in hindsight, it's sad to say that was kind of the best time for Star Wars. I mean, I guess during that entire decade, not in the sense that the new content was the best, but the prospects for the future of Star Wars could not have been higher. The big message of that time was Star Wars is back, but it wasn't under Lucas, which many people thought would give us a fresh take on the franchise. And I remember the anticipation like it was yesterday. It might have been 5 years ago, but it feels like just a day ago. Seeing the casting photos of the first script reading, hearing that J.J. Abrams was directing, and that gave everyone excitement, especially with the return of Lawrence Kasdan as the co-writer. And there was no real controversy about the new trilogy, and I remember the hype for that film was something I haven't felt since 2015. Sure, there was a lot of hype for the Avengers Endgame movie, but that was the ending of a long 20-year story. The Force Awakens was the beginning of a new one. Even when the film released, I remember everything about it, waiting in line for 2 hours to get the best seats possible, the exact theater I watched in. The feeling of seeing a brand new Star Wars film was indescribable. It was something I had not experienced since I was a kid at the age of 6. This was 2015. I was 16 now. I was ready to start this new story in my favorite universe. I remember every single moment I had watching this movie. I remember my first initial thought was a mild disappointment with the opening crawl. Seeing the first words being, "Luke Skywalker has vanished," really upset me because he was my favorite character, and I really just wanted to see him back on the big screen. But when the movie began, I remember actually enjoying almost every single minute of it. It felt like the original Star Wars films. The new characters, Rey, Finn, and Poe, all felt unique and interesting to me at that time. There was a good amount of humor that made me and the crowd that I was watching it with laugh. It was one of the best movie experiences in my life. The only time I felt really annoyed was when I put all the pieces together. Once Poe started his trench run on Starkiller Base, I remember thinking, wait a minute, this is literally A New Hope. I wasn't upset or disappointed, but I was kind of annoyed that it repeated so many story beats. I remember a few days, maybe even a few hours before I actually got to see the movie, someone commented on my Instagram page, Han Solo dies, and God, why do so many people spoil these movies like they're... I don't know what the point is. I truly believe there is a special place in hell for people who do that. But my fondest moment on watching The Force Awakens in theaters was during the movie, close to the end. It was when Rey was going to talk to Luke. I looked to my right, and there was a guy who had to be in his mid to late 30s, which made this unique for me because I was seeing the look on his face while watching the scene, the anticipation that he had for what I could tell was his favorite character. It was like seeing the inner child come out due to his love for the movies. It was almost a tear-jerking moment for him, and that meant a lot to me because it meant that this was a powerful moment for a lot of people in the audience. Someone like me who grew up with Star Wars, but also someone like him who grew up with the original Star Wars and was actually going to get to see his character that he's waited a lot longer than I have on the big screen again. Seeing Luke was a powerful moment and a very powerful ending to The Force Awakens. I left happy and content with the movie, and the biggest thing was I wanted to see what would happen next. After The Force Awakens, everyone was hyped for Episode 8, which I think proves the movie actually did its job. After Episode 8, The Last Jedi, I didn't really care to see Episode 9, and say what you will about Episode 8, I think it's undisputed that fans felt more optimistic for the next Star Wars film after The Force Awakens than they did after The Last Jedi. And I remember after The Force Awakens, a lot of the YouTube videos complaining about the film, and I think there were a lot of complaints about the movie that are very valid. It did repeat a lot of threads from the original trilogy. It did have some plot holes that fans rightfully will never forgive, and there is this now like rewritten history by some fans that people were not excited for Episode 8. Look, that's a lie. Everyone was excited for Episode 8 leading up to 2017. But the biggest flaw from The Force Awakens is hindsight. Looking back, this film really set up some of the good stuff for the rest of the trilogy that the story never really followed up with. Episode 7 was a step in the right direction for a possible good story, but in hindsight, it's what kind of crutched the entire trilogy from the start. The movie set up the universe to be exactly like it was in Episode 4, A New Hope. The Empire, or First Order, has built a massive planet-destroying weapon called the Death Star, or Starkiller Base, and the Rebellion or Resistance is a small band of freedom fighters trying to free the galaxy from tyranny. There's also this hero from a desert planet who is in the middle of nowhere, who are named Luke or Rey, who yearns for adventure and meaning in their life. This character is destined to become a Jedi, which is an ancient order of peacekeepers that have completely died out by this point in the timeline. My point here is that I don't mind The Force Awakens using the story beats of A New Hope. It made sense to familiarize your audience with Star Wars again. But the problem is, the galaxy basically did a reset to A New Hope, where the Jedi Order is gone and the Rebellion has to take on this big empire. It's not only boring and lazy as a premise, now it's also extremely limiting to what you can do with the story for the next two films. A lot of us fans have massive gripes with The Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker, but can we really blame those films for playing the cards that they were dealt with from The Force Awakens? Out of all the Star Wars movies we have, I think this is one of the most interesting ones to talk about. I think it did a good job at making us feel like we're back in the Star Wars galaxy again, that there's a story to be told in this galaxy far, far away. All that's really good, but at the same time, this film had so many missed opportunities, it just makes you wonder, where did all the creativity go? I've always rated this film a 7 out of 10, because I think it's just a solid movie that I can enjoy watching 5 years later. But now that it's been 5 years, I can't help but feel some sense of guilt with this movie. It took away any unique story with Luke Skywalker by putting him as a recluse on an island that Rian Johnson himself said he had no idea how to explain he got there. So that's why we got Luke from The Last Jedi that many people hated. The entire Jedi Order was destroyed again, and the new Empire is basically dominating the Rebels, so it's like nothing really changed. It felt like all the work our original trilogy characters did, Luke, Han, and Leia, was a big waste of time because now they have to do it all again, but this time each one of them dies film by film. I think also The Force Awakens will serve as the biggest lesson companies like Lucasfilm and others can learn from, and that lesson is going to be, make these stories with a full-out plan, from beginning to end. They delayed The Force Awakens by 6 months for script rewrites, they did the same thing for The Last Jedi, and then they delayed Episode 9 because they did not like the original director's, Colin Trevorrow's, script. Does this really sound like a group of people who had all things planned out in 2014 when they started making these movies? I don't think so. It took these people 7 years to put out 3 new Star Wars films, starting from 2013 to the end of 2019. It took George Lucas 10 years just to do the prequels, and say what you will about those films, and believe me, I have said plenty, they at least fit together in an overall narrative, and though that narrative is extremely flawed, they were able to hit every deadline, and the first film did not ruin the chances of the next 2 being able to tell good stories. In the end, I think we will all look back at The Force Awakens with one good feeling of remembering how excited we all were. Remember the hype for Star Wars back in 2014, 2015? There was a big promise of a bright future for the franchise that stayed around until I would say around 2017. It was a great time to be a Star Wars fan, and though Episode 7 more or less ruined any potential great stories the trilogy could have explored, I still think there are some different routes Episode 8 and 9 could have gone that would have made the entire trilogy just a little bit better. So maybe it's not all The Force Awakens' fault for the sequel films. It still is considered the best of the 3 5 years later, so I guess that means something, and to me it is the best of the 3, but tell me your thoughts in the comment section below. What do you think about The Force Awakens 5 years later? Is it better now? Has it gotten worse? And do you think it's the cause of the sequel trilogy being such a mess, or is it the highlight of that trilogy? If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe, because it does help out the channel. I'm Star Wars Only. I will see you all next time, and may the Force be with you, always.